Hey guys, Justin here with JHart Modelworks, coming to you with another video on the 69 Mustang Restomod. So in the last video we took care of all of the body prep and we got the C1 body kit on. Everything's pretty much ready for paint. I went ahead and gave it a nice bath with some Dawn dish soap and some warm water. I got it mounted up onto the paint stand, got everything ready, wiped it down with some isopropyl alcohol just to get rid of the last little oils from my hands from getting everything mounted into place, and we are good to go. So let's go ahead and get the camera flipped around and let's get to it. Alright guys, we are starting with some Mr. Surfacer 1500 black primer. Cut this 50-50 with Mr. Leveling Thinner. We are going to do 3 coats. We're going to wait 10 minutes between coats, and we always wait at least 1 hour before moving on to our next paint. Now we are starting out by hitting all those hard to reach, easy to forget spots. You know, all the edges, the wheel wells, headlights, taillights, those vents. Well, I forget to shoot the vents, but you know, those kind of things. And then we will move on to long, smooth strokes all the way down the length of the car. Now, I am not going to make you sit through every single coat all the way through the coat. I will show pretty much just at least one side of the car through each coat. But for this first one, I am going to go ahead and show you absolutely the entire spraying of the entire body, just so you can get an idea on the spray paint stand acrobatics, the twisting and turning necessary to get all those little nooks and crannies. Also, while spraying, you want to make sure that you spray anything else that's going to be body color at the same time, as we are going to be doing a candy paint job on this car. We want to make sure we get the engine bay really good, as the engine bay is going to be black. Another thing to point out, of course, this footage is sped up considerably, usually around 1.5 to 2 times normal speed. Do not think I'm rushing through like this. Take your time, get everything sprayed nice and smooth. Do not rush through the process. After our first coat, we want to take some time and look it over to make sure that everything is smooth and even and absolutely perfect. We want to make sure nothing looks discolored. There's no rough spots, there's no scratches, no cuts, no anything. We're looking for signs of surface contamination. Like I said, we're doing a candy paint job on this car. Any scratches, any cuts, any surface variation at all, it will show up in the candy, I promise. So after the first coat, let it dry for a while, then look everything over. If you find any issues at all, you want to take the body back and using 1000 grit Tamiya sponge, sand it back to plastic to smooth everything out. Luckily, our body is in good shape, so we don't have to do that. And we are back for coats 2 and 3. Like I said before, make sure you spray everything body color together. So we are going with the hood here. The reason for this is you want to make sure that there's as little variation as possible between all of your body color parts. So if you spray them together, everything is sprayed at the same temperature, it's sprayed with the same mix, it is sprayed with the same, typically the same stroke, because you're spraying it at the same time. So if you come back in a day or two later and you spray the hood or mirrors or something else, you could be spraying a different temperature, a different humidity, your paint mix could be off, you could be spraying heavier than you were the first time. Any variation like that is going to cause a difference in the color, and it's going to show up and it will make a difference in your paint job. Alright guys, we have given the primer at least an hour to gas off, and we're going to start coming in and laying down our base coats. For this, we're going to be using House of Colors Galaxy Gray from Scale Finishes. If you want a really bright color with a lot of really bright highlights, you want to go with the Orion Silver. If you want a really dark, rich color with a lot of really intense shadows, the Galaxy Gray is the base coat to go with. This stuff is absolutely amazing. Now you're going to see I do get some stripes in the roof on this first coat. That is okay, we do take care of that in coats 2 and 3. But to prevent that, while you're spraying, make sure you get good, even overlap and spray from multiple directions. So don't just go front to back, go side to side or maybe diagonal as well, just to help break those lines up. We're now coming in for coat number 2. We're going to start with our hood here. Make sure you do all of your body color parts together so that you get even color on all of them. Again, we're just going to come in and do nice even strokes all the way down the length of the body, and we are going to vary that direction. So we will start side to side. We'll then come back and we'll spray up and down. You'll even see me do kind of a circle pattern all over the car. And that circle pattern is just to help break up the lines and make sure we don't end up with stripes in our finish. It's right about here, you'll see I come back in and I get a lot of real good even overlap, and I fix up all the striping I got in that first coat. So we're coming back in, we're loading up some more paint for coat number 3. This coat may not have been necessary. You'll notice that the color doesn't really change on this coat, and that's because at this point I have achieved full coverage. If you're laying down paint and the color is still changing, you don't have full coverage yet. But if you're laying down that paint and it's just looking exactly the same, you know you're pretty much done. I absolutely love these Scale Finishes paints, especially for their House of Color line. You can get House of Color from other places, but for some reason when I get it from Scale Finishes, it's like he's getting this just a lot finer than some places do. So House of Colors is an automotive grade paint, and sometimes when you get automotive grade paints, when you put them on a scale model, it kind of makes them look like Dad's bass boat from the 80s. If you're doing a lowrider, maybe that's not a bad thing, but for this, these Scale Finishes paints are just perfectly scaled. Alright guys, once again, we have given it at least an hour for the base coats to gas off. We're going to come in and start doing our color coats. We're doing 5, yes 5 coats of House of Colors Burgundy Candy from Scale Finishes. You are only going to see 4 coats though, because coat number 5's footage has vanished. That is okay because it looks exactly like coat 4, to be honest with you. Once again, all those hard to reach, easy to forget spots, those vents, definitely want to get into those vents. Everything on the front end is a hard to reach spot, all along your wheel wells. And then once we're done getting all those, we're going to come back in and start doing long, smooth strokes with even overlap all over the body. You want to make sure you start spraying off the body, travel all the way down the length of the body, and don't let off until you're all the way past it on the other end. You don't want to get any kind of splats or spatters, and that can happen if you just start the air in the middle of the body. So long, smooth strokes all the way up and down, all the way across. If you're going diagonal, just make sure that you go the length of the body. You'll also see me do all sorts of circles in here. Again, we're trying to break up the paint and make sure we don't get any streaks. And again, we're going to come in and do our hood at the exact same time because we want to make sure that we're spraying in the same temperature, the same paint, the same mix, the same environment as our body. Now, in a terrible job of editing, we are starting with the hood on coat number 2. You see that I started going side to side and then went up and down, just changing my direction a little bit. I'm also going to go in there and make sure I get a real good shot inside that hood scoop, and then we're moving on to our body. So we're wrapping up coat number 2, and after every coat we want to come in and compare our hood with our body, make sure that we're getting the same color tone so that you don't end up with like one part just darker than the other. And we're now on to coats number 3 and 4. So some of y'all may have not seen all of my last video where I did start talking about scale finishes. I emailed Jameson, who runs Scale Finishes, and asked him for a business card, and in reply to my email he sent me a discount code for 10% off, said that if any of my viewers wanted a 10% discount they could enter JHart 10 in the discount code section during checkout on his website and get 10% off. The link is in the bottom. This is not a referral. I make nothing off of this. I just wanted a business card so I could hold it up and show off the final finish on the paint, give him a shout out at the same time, and he gave us a discount code. That was incredibly generous of him, so thank you very much, Jameson. Alright guys, so after several hours and a small fortune in masking tape, we are masked off for our stripes. Now our very first coat is going to be another coat of the burgundy candy. The theory behind this is that this coat is going to seal the edges of the tape to prevent any bleed through, and if we do get a bleed under, it will be the same color as what's on the body, so it will be less noticeable. Now we're going to keep this extremely light. We just barely want to cover over the edges of the tape, just enough, like I said, to make sure that we get it sealed. We definitely do not want to even remotely consider anything like a wet coat, just a nice, dry, smooth coat of paint over all the tape edges. So now we can start with our actual stripe color, and we're going to be using Toyota's Asphalt Gray Metallic from Scale Finishes. This is a Toyota GT86 color. It is actually the color of my 1-to-1 car. It's a perfect match too. I compared this to my car. It is spot on. So we're doing really light mist coats of this. We want to make sure we get everything twisted, get all the angles, make sure we get all the recesses, all the little nooks and crannies in the front end. Make sure you get underneath that hood scoop. We want the color to be consistent all the way through. And then, like I said, it's just nice, light, smooth coats. And this covers really, really well. We probably didn't need 3 coats. We may not have even needed 2, but I went ahead and did it just to make sure we had absolutely good coverage and we didn't get any of that burgundy red bleeding through our stripes. Now you'll notice I'm keeping the paint within the confines of that stripe area. I'm just going a very little bit over the edge of the tape area. The less that you stray out of this area, the less chances there are of getting some random errant overspray somewhere on the body where you just didn't get it taped down good enough. And we are coming back in here for coat number 2 of the gray. Again, just nice, smooth, even coats. It's very light, very quick. We're not like putting a lot of paint down. That first coat covered really well, so we're just going to do a quick glance over the whole thing, make sure we cover it really well, and then we will come back for coat number 3. And speaking of which, here is coat number 3, and you can see there's absolutely no color change at all. We definitely have 100% full coverage on this already. Hours to mask, but minutes to unmask. But take your time here. When you're peeling the tape off, do not pull straight up and do not go at it really quick. You want to pull that tape back across itself, preferably at about a 45-degree angle, but keep it close to the body. This way, you're going to create less shear force on the paint, and there will be less of a chance that you're going to pull the paint off with the masking tape. Taking your time here, along with all of that surface prep we did to get a nice clean surface, will go a long ways to making unmasking a lot less stressful. Alright guys, we are back at the bench and we need to take care of some details before we do clear coat. We're going to start with that Mustang script on the back. Now, using a tip I learned from Robert over at Zippy's Model Garage, we're going to lay out some Vallejo Model Air Silver. It's a water-based acrylic. We're then going to take our mechanical pencil eraser, dip that into the acrylic paint, and then tap off the most of it so that you just have a smooth sheet of paint on the eraser. You don't want any blobs of liquid. Then we're going to take our eraser and we're going to extremely gently tap each one of these letters just on the raised surface one at a time to get the silver transferred onto the raised letter. If you do this right, you do not get paint all over the model, you just get it on the raised surface for the letters. Now, of course, I didn't do it right. Now, I should have masked over the top and the bottom. That would have prevented me from making the mess that I did. But because this is a water-based acrylic paint over lacquers, we can come in with a little bit of UMP airbrush cleaner or some Vallejo acrylic thinner or water and a sharp cotton bud like the small Tamiya ones, and we can very easily clean the excess paint off before it dries. Now, if you find that maybe you missed some areas or your coverage wasn't even enough, come back in, repeat the process, just tap in a little more silver, make sure you keep it on the raised areas, don't go down inside the letters, and clean up any excess as needed. If done right, we should end up with something like this. The next thing we're going to take care of is some bare metal foil around all of the window trims. Now, I'm going to do this the most obnoxious way possible. I was trying to do something and it didn't really work. If you look at the actual trim for the car, it is not one big piece all the way around the rear window. It is in fact 4 pieces. There are 2 kind of L-shaped pieces that go around the side and the top. They meet in the middle, and then it comes around the other side, and then there's 2 that go across the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out an L-shaped piece that should be a little more than halfway across the car. Next, using some tweezers, I'm going to apply this around the window trim so that it lays up the side and across the top. I'm going to work it down with my fingers, and then I'm going to come back in with a cotton bud and work it down some more. Now, to make sure that we have the foil worked all the way down into the crevices, we're going to come back in with a toothpick and we're going to burnish it yet again. Now, using our scalpel and a number 11 scalpel blade, we're going to cut the bare metal foil absolutely dead center along the center of the body, and then we're going to follow the trim all the way around and cut away the excess foil. I like to use a scalpel instead of a hobby knife, as scalpel blades are about half as thick and about 3 times as sharp, so they cut through the foil a lot easier and cleaner. Now, before we remove the excess foil, we want to go back with our toothpick and burnish it down again. Cutting can cause the foil to lift slightly. We also want to cut away the foil from the inside of the opening, leaving just enough foil to wrap around the trim. We can then very carefully remove the excess trim from around the window, and we'll then come back in with a cotton bud and we'll burnish it down one more time. We repeated this process for the other side of the rear window, and then I tried to get fancy. So on the actual one-to-one car, there's a small, thin little strip of chrome that covers over the center section where the 2 trim pieces meet in the middle. I thought maybe I could apply a small little strip of bare metal foil to replicate that. I sadly came to the harsh realization that bare metal foil is just way too thin for that. When you lay a piece of bare metal foil over another piece of bare metal foil, it is so thin it just disappears. Now, maybe if I had stacked 2 or 3 pieces on top of each other, this might have worked, but I decided not to mess with it any further and just did the rest of the bare metal foil the normal way. Alright, back in the booth, and it is time for some 2K Clear. We're going to be using Spray Gunner's no-name brand 2K Clear Coat. I love this stuff. It works really well. It is 2 parts of the clear to 1 part of the activator, and then you do about 5 to 10% of the thinner. and we are going to have some problems with this, but we will talk about that in a second. We're going to give the entire body a brush down with our anti-static brush. This will be the last time you see this brush because I stuck that brush in my pocket and it went through the laundry and it has died. So we start laying down our first coat of clear. Now, some guys like to do a very light mist coat and let it get tacky. I found that I prefer to lay down a medium coat instead. It's not going to be glass smooth, but I don't really want a lot of texture if I can avoid it because it shows up in the end result. The problem is I can't avoid it. It's, I think, 10 o'clock at night or later when I'm recording this, and it's still 91 degrees in the garage. The reducer or thinner from Spray Gunner is not a slow reducer, so it's drying too quick to really self-level correctly, and the way the Mobius atomizes paints isn't helping either. I found I love the Mobius for color coats, where I always want light mist coats. It atomizes perfectly, but it struggles to give me a really wet coat when I'm doing clear. Between the two, the first coat came out with a lot more texture than I like. Now I end up making some changes here in a little bit. I will add a little bit of a different thinner to help out, and we're going to end up switching airbrushes, and in the end we will save this clear coat. So you can see here where I'm spraying the top and it's just not coming out all that smooth. Even when I try adding more to it, it just doesn't level out, and that's due to just the way the Mobius atomizes the paint. Alright, so we are back for coat number 2, and you will notice that I have switched airbrushes. I have switched back over to the Badger Omni 4000, and I am getting a smoother coat. It's still not quite what I want it to do, but it is definitely better than I was getting before. So it's not that the Mobius is a bad brush, this is just not its forte. And that's okay. You know, it's not a bad thing to have different brushes for different tasks. And to be honest with you, if it wasn't 91 frickin' degrees, I wouldn't be having nearly this much trouble. I mean, the Omni is doing a better job, but it's not laying this down exactly right either. So you can see through here, it does go down a little bit better, but it's still not what I'm used to. It's not perfect. We are back for coat number 3, and in this coat we're going to see a significant improvement. I've added more thinner to the mix, but not the same thinner. I've added the unicorn tears. That's right folks, Mr. Leveling Thinner fixes everything, and that includes urethane 2K clear coat. Mr. Leveling Thinner is a mild, hobby-grade lacquer thinner with a retarder additive that makes it slower to dry. This essentially turns it into a slow reducer, and that is exactly the purpose it's going to serve here. So the mix is now very thin as it has twice the recommended amount of reducer. You have to be very careful because over thin clear is more likely to run. So you don't want to just ham fist this on. At the same time, it is much thinner, so as long as you don't get a run, it's also not going to give you that thick, syrupy look either. Alright, so because this mix is ridiculously over thinned, we are able to get away with a 4th and final coat, and that is absolutely going to give us that final finish that we're really after without it pulling up on all the edges and looking like syrup. Now we are going to end up with just the slightest hint of texture in this. It's not even enough that you're actually going to see on the camera. I'm just like ridiculously picky. So I am going to end up sanding and polishing out the entire car. A lot of times I will just sand the areas where I have problems at, and then I will just polish everything out. But for this, we are going to sand the whole car and then give it about 2 rounds of polishing. Alright guys, we are back at the bench. It has been a couple of days now, and this is our result. Okay, let's not lie. It's actually been a week and a half. I have just put off and put off the last little bit because I don't like doing it, but we've gotten it done. There was a slight bit of orange peel to it. It wasn't even really orange peel, it was just like a slight texture. It was Most guys would have been perfectly happy with the finish that we got pretty much straight out of the gun. I am a little picky. I have some issues, and I felt it needed a good deal of work. There's a little bit of dust in it here and there as well. I do live in Texas, so dust is just a thing. I've gotten most of it. Where there are still some slight nibs to it is just areas I don't really want to press my luck and sand. Like you can see, there's a couple like right there. But I've already sanded the ever-loving crap out of it, and I don't want to risk going through that clear coat and damaging our paint job. So we started with the Trizact 3000 grit pad, and we sanded everything down, got it nice and smooth. We then moved on to the 5000 and then the 8000 pads. We then went with Tamiya's polishes. We started with their coarse. We did 2 rounds of the coarse, 2 rounds of the fine, and a single round of the finish. So basically what I tend to do is I will do 1 round with the rotary tool and a foam pad. I would only polish with a rotary tool on a 2K clear coat. Those of you who use the Rattle Can 1K lacquer clears, that clear coat is too soft. A rotary tool will burn through that in an absolute heartbeat. But because 2K hardens and it hardens so well, you can get away with using a rotary tool, and it does a great job. So I will do a round with the rotary tool, and then I will come back and I will do a hand polish round with the coarse and the fine. And then when it comes to the finish, I pretty much just hand polish the finish compound. And I think this is a fantastic result personally. Go ahead and do our fancy schmancy card test. I mean, that is fantastic. I can't, personally, I don't think I could do any better than that. So while we got that Scale Finishes card on there, check out scalefinishes.com. All of the paint, with the exception of the Mustang letters, which is just some Vallejo, all of this paint has been done with Scale Finishes paint. It lays down perfect every time I use it. I've never had a bad paint job with Scale Finishes. Just a fantastic product. He has been really kind and has given us a 10% off discount code. That'll be down in the description below. It is JHart10. Enter that at checkout and you will get 10% off your order. But yeah, I am super happy with this. So you may notice that I'm wearing the white gloves. I am not trying to be fancy schmancy. I have literally just finished applying a coat of ceramic coat about an hour ago to this and polishing it off. I use the Nano Bond. You can pick this stuff up off of Amazon. It is not cheap. This stuff is, I think, I want to say it's like $40 or $45 a bottle. And there's a tiny little bottle in here. When I did, I forget which car I showed it on, but I've shown a video on how to apply it. I want to say it was during the 240Z. It was during that polishing video that I did for the 240Z. So yeah, this is the tiny bottle you get, and you're going to go, oh my God, that is a lot of money. Here's the deal. This is designed for 1-to-1 cars. We're using automotive grade paint. Might as well use automotive grade products to protect it. 6 to 10 drops is all you need to do an entire car. I have a tendency to use too much, and that makes the car kind of fingerprinty. It'll take a couple of days. I will just basically come in and keep polishing this every so often with one of these eyeglass wipes. These are super cool. If you go, I know a lot of us are getting into that age where we have to go to the eye doctor every year and get them glasses. See if you can get some extra ones of these, because for polishing claws, these are fantastic. But I'll just wipe this down every so often for a few days and it will finally all come off. But for right now, it's still kind of fingerprinty, and so rather than leaving my grubby fingerprints all over it, I threw on some gloves. Alright guys, so that is going to be a wrap for this video. Thanks for hanging out and building with me. Next week's video should be the final on the Porsche for the Porsche group build. That is all wrapped up. And I'm going to start working on the engine and chassis for this monster right here. I don't know if that's going to be 1 video or 2. We will see what happens. So thanks for hanging out and building with me. I always appreciate you guys watching the videos, and I will catch you on the next one.